من مولومبي وتحديدا من أعلى برج. رح نتعرف اليوم بحلقتنا على فرانشيسكو رزق، وهو الوزير السابق للشؤون الخارجية البرازيلية وأيضا عضو بالمحكمة العليا الفيدرالية والانتخابية. خلينا سوا نتعرف عليه عن قريب. Professor Francisco Rezek, thank you for receiving us here in your house in Sao Paulo. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here. You are a very famous lawyer, a former professor in many universities in Brazil, as well as the former president of the Federal Supreme Court and the ex-president of the Superior Electoral Court. And you were the ex-minister of the Foreign Affairs in Brazil. You were born in Minas Gerais in 1944 after your father immigrated from Baalbek, Lebanon, in 1918. Tell us more about this immigration.
You know, Karen, my mother's family went to Brazil in the late 19th century. Some of my uncles, my grand-uncles, on the side of my mother, were already established in Brazil, in many parts of the country, in the late 1880s. And my grandfather went here at the age of 19 in 1994 to stay with his brother, who was already a well-known and considered merchant in a part of the highlands of Brazil. Then my grandfather went back to Lebanon and again to Brazil in 1912, when my mother and my first uncle had been already born in Lebanon. So that the family has deep roots in this part of Brazil. The most recent members of the family, having immigrated, came in the late 50s, so many years ago. It's a family of merchants in the beginning, with a number of doctors, of medicine doctors, of physicians, and professors of medicine also. I belong in the family to a small minority of lawyers. I have a cousin, for instance, who have presided over the federal court in Sao Paulo. My sons and also a nephew. But we are mostly a family working in technology and especially medicine.
Yes.
With some lawyers amongst whom I am.
But all successful, of course. I also heard that your father and mother were very famous in the community. Your father was really known for his values and his big heart.
He was a very respected man in his field of activity, and a very esteemed man. The chronicle of his dad registered the fact that he was a man of business and of magnanimous heart. My mother, she became a widow very early for the time. I was 18 when I lost my father, and she was a community leader, a leader on the field of the assistance of
children in need, like
for handicapped children.
Yes, it's a great job because it needs much of her time and you know, maybe her human touch.
Yes, yes. And she lived much more than my father. She died a few years ago at the age of 97, having kept her lucidity and her strength until the last moment.
This is
it
beautiful.
was remarkable.
Remarkable.
Exactly as she wished and planned.
Did your parents used to speak Arabic?
Yes.
In your presence? And do you speak a bit of Arabic yourself? Do you understand?
Yeah. When I first went to an international conference in Geneva, and I heard learned Arabic, legal Arabic, I realized that my Arabic was very simple, very poor, very domestic. But I heard the language during, and this is why I say today that it's a very, very rich and difficult language. Otherwise, I would have the control of Arabic because I heard the language during my childhood, spoken by my parents and by other members of including others who were unable to speak Portuguese. Most of them, even those who immigrated already at the age of 40, 50, learned Portuguese and were able to read and write. But some of the oldest members of the colony in that part of Brazil were unable to speak Portuguese. And with them, it was always a question of understanding Arabic in order to communicate with them.
Indeed. I noticed that in Brazil it's a must to know the language, the Portuguese language, because really we cannot find a big percentage of people who speak another language like English or French. Knowing that you have only a brother who is an engineer, tell us more about your childhood and the best memories you have.
Well, it was a province childhood. It was a small town. I don't consider it's too small. It's a 40,000 inhabitants town in the south of Minas Gerais, where I was primarily educated, and I lived in a very happy society. It was good to be in that part of Brazil in that time of the 20th century, and it was especially good to belong to the Lebanese colony.
Why?
You know, Karen, we were considered to be a special part of the local society due to our union. The Lebanese colony was very, very much united, irrespectively of whether they belonged or not to the same family, and with a taste for life, which was considered to be an example for others. It was good to belong to that part of the local society in that during that very interesting part of the history of the country.
Yeah. You told us before that most of your family went into the medical field, but you are a lawyer. Why did you choose to be a lawyer? Did you like it, or you wanted really to succeed what already you've done?
It was my parents' project for me to send me to the medicine faculty, but I understood at the age of 16, 17 that that was not my vocation. I preferred humanities. I preferred to manage the language and the argument. I also considered the fact that if my mother wanted to be assisted during her old years, she was already provided of a number of doctors in the family, so it wouldn't make a big difference in the course of her project.
I understand. أنا موجودة اليوم بمكان اللي تأسست فيها ساو باولو سنة 1554. مثل ما شفنا فرانشيسكو رزق ولد بميناس جيراس سنة 1944 من بعد ما هاجر والده من بعلبك سنة 1897، ودخل أفضل الجامعات منها بانتيون باريس 3 وهارفارد وأكسفورد، وهو حائز على دكتوراه بالحقوق الدولية. لتعرفوا أكثر عن حياته المهنية المميزة خليكم معنا بعد البريك. Professor Rezek, I would love to talk about your career, which is outstanding. I was really astonished to read about it. Let us talk from the beginning. You are a holder of a law degree from Minas Gerais University. Then you worked as a reporter at a newspaper until 1965, when you won a scholarship for a research program at Harvard. Tell us more about that.
I was a student in Minas Gerais, an undergraduate student in law in Minas Gerais when I went to Harvard for it was an extension program on life and institutions in the United States and problems of economic development. It was a program organized by an American institution in order to bring there every year some 100 Brazilian, what they call the student leaders. We refused this qualification, but they called us, they used it to call us as
very humble, always.
Student leaders. And it has been for all of us. Many of the members of these groups who went to the United States under this program at the time are now senators, governors, and holders of other prominent functions in Brazil. But it was an extension program in Harvard with a stay in family houses in Massachusetts, an extraordinary experience. During my law course in Belo Horizonte, I was also a reporter, actually deputy reporter, and not a graduated reporter, but an assistant reporter in the Diário de Minas, a local newspaper. You know, Karen, in this country, even today, you can hardly find in Brazil students only dedicated to their studies. Most students in this country do work, not only in humanities, law, psychology, but also in medicine, technology. Most students have to work in order to support themselves while they study. During my legal course in Minas Gerais, I was therefore a reporter, an assistant reporter at the Diário de Minas, and it was a marvelous experience to look after the facts and to report and to write and to improve the art of writing in a newspaper. So I have good memories of this professional experience, precocious, and I keep until now my
articles,
reporter document.
And this maybe helped you to be a great writer. You have many published books.
Yes,
regarding law.
Also, I come from. I was a part of a generation of students in Minas Gerais, very much fond of literature and willing, most of them, to write something. Normally short stories, but some poetry also. From those candidates to literature, some half dozen in my group are currently very remarkable writers in Brazil.
Indeed. I would like to know about your experience at Harvard as a Brazilian student. How was it?
It was fantastic for all the members of the group, because some of us, our ignorance of the American reality was so huge that we understood, we supposed that we were going to a very aseptic and modern and somewhat dominated by technology and pragmatism. And when we arrived to Harvard, we remarked that it was so much more Latin and traditional and heraldic than all we knew in a Latin country.
Harvard is not the only university you went to. In 1967 you went to Paris for your PhD, to La Sorbonne, and then also later to Oxford. Tell us more about these universities and your own experience there.
You know, at the last year of my legal course in Belo Horizonte, I was aware of the fact that there were opportunities to have a postgraduate course in centers of excellence in many parts of the world. Actually, I have obtained a scholarship from the Fulbright Foundation, and it was a proposal of a master's degree either in Columbia, New York, or in Berkeley, California. But a few weeks after having learned of this possibility, I obtained a scholarship from the French government in order to make directly the doctorate in Paris, in the Sorbonne. At that time, it is no longer possible. At that time, it was possible to apply for a doctoral degree directly without a pass through the master's degree. And in spite of the fact that the French scholarship was hugely more modest than the American patterns of scholarship, I decided to go to Paris. And I never regretted this decision. I arrived to Paris in September 1967, and I have been there for the whole year, remarkable, unforgettable year of 1968.
Then you went to Oxford, where you got your diploma in international public law, and you are an honorary fellow there. Tell us about that.
Well, when I went to Oxford, I was already almost middle-aged man. I was 35 years. I had already 3 children, 2 girls,
already,
and yes, and a baby boy. And we spent there 1 year, 1 academic year, and it was my first tenable, comparatively long experience in an English-speaking country. Fantastic, because I was in the area of international law, but living in college with my family and learning whatever Oxford has to teach to people. One of my good friends of the diplomatic career in Brazil, who was at the time a member of the Brazilian embassy in London, and who used to visit me in Oxford sometimes. He was a very, very respected intellectual. But he said that in Oxford you always feel you always have the absolute assimilation of your imperfection, because you are so much surrounded by
perfect people,
by wisdom and by culture, that you can perfectly realize the dimension of your limits. This is true. This is true.
Then you started your career in Brazil in 1972.
Yes.
When you became an attorney at the Republic at the Supreme Court. Tell us more about your responsibilities then.
Yes. This was before Oxford and after Paris. It was a public contest for the first time because the Brazilian Constitution established that the career of the attorneys of the Republic is to be founded upon public contest, competition of merits. But this was anyway the first public contest organized for the purpose, and myself and my 32 or 33 colleagues having succeeded in this public contest, we found a sort of an empty institution, and our career was very rapid and successful. The most successful in the contest were designated to work directly before the Supreme Court. This was my career.
Yes, and then I know that you were appointed Deputy Attorney General of the Republic again from 79 to 1983. Is this another kind of...
I was the Deputy Attorney General from 79 to 83. In March, actually in February 83, I was appointed to the Supreme Court.
Of course, we will talk about that, but were your responsibilities then of another kind?
No. At the same kind, but with a different level.
Okay. Yes. You became Justice of the Supreme Court in Brazil on March 1983, knowing that you were the youngest of the century. You were 39 years old, appointed by the President and supported by the Senate. Tell us more about this, one of the highest positions you can ever get in Brazil, and what were your achievements?
You know, Karen, in spite of the fact that the private law in Brazil is of European, mostly of European origin, our political model is American. It's a federation, a republic, and a presidentialist system of government. This means that we have here a typical tripartition of power. And the judges, mostly the Supreme Court of Brazil, is a real power of the state with authority to do what courts in European countries, for instance, are utterly unable to do.
Okay.
To withdraw laws of the parliament, if necessary, in the name of the Constitution, and to withdraw acts of government in the name of the law. For me, it was something fantastic to be appointed at this age. Yes, in the past, in the distant past, in the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, two different men have been appointed slightly younger than I. But in the modern times, I have been the youngest. In office as foreign minister, when I decided, when in a reform of the ministry, of the composition of the government, I went back to the Supreme Court. I mean that I was again appointed, again approved by the Senate, and for the first time in Brazil,
appointed two times.
Appointed two times. Then shortly after my return to the court, a huge crisis started in the government.
I understand.
Leading to the first case of impeachment, of presidential impeachment of President Collor, occurred in November of that year of 1992. Then I had 5 years in the Supreme Court, and eventually, having time enough to retire, I have been elected by the General Assembly and by the Security Council of the United Nations to the International Court of Justice, to the Court of of The Hague.
Of The Hague. It was a great position too, and a great experience in The Hague, because you have the worldwide great cases to deal with.
Yes, yes. You know, I used to say at that time that if you consider the extension, the quantity of work, it's a very light burden for someone coming from Brazil. But the responsibility is enormous, because each case before the court of The Hague is what should have been in the past a war, with all its consequences. This is the reason why every case in The Hague produces a decision of a volume, with other volumes corresponding to the oral pleadings, to the written pleadings, and so.
So the cases are very difficult, complex, and they cannot be, what can I say, maybe resolved in each country. I mean, there are many big cases, non-resolved big cases that are sent to The Hague.
To The Hague, there's cases involving states.
I understand.
The only parties before the court of The Hague are sovereign states. And well, my period of office in The Hague, 1996 to 2005, was extraordinarily rich. There were periods in the history of the court which have been somewhat boring for the judges, due to either to the small number of cases or to the the comparative poverty of the legal questions dealt with. No, my period was extraordinary. We had dealt with a number of cases involving borders, territorial and maritime borders, but having to do with more dramatic episodes, as the case of Lockerbie, as the case of the oil platforms in Iran, as the case of the nuclear experiences in the Pacific.
Very hot subject.
And the case of the war in Palestine. One of the most extraordinary decisions of the Hague Court, and also one of the moments where before the bar of the court we have seen the most brilliant lawyers of the world all on the same side, all defending the same thesis, eventually prevailing.
I would love to talk about the political side of your career. You were elected Minister of the Foreign Affairs of Brazil from March 1990 till April 1992. You were the first Brazilian of Lebanese descent. Tell us more about this position and your responsibilities then.
Yes, really, I was the first Lebanese Brazilian to be the foreign minister of the country. At the Supreme Court, there have been shortly before me 2 men of Lebanese origin occupying the chairs of justices. It was very stimulating to deal with international politics at that time, but there was no substantial change in the general lines, in the philosophical lines of Brazilian foreign policy. This has been always, Karen, a very independent country, a non-aligned country. Brazil did not integrate formally so-called list of non-aligned countries, but it would be very difficult to find a more non-aligned country than this one. And the American government, in a number of cases and instances, had to face this reality. This is not a a very docile neighboring country.
I understand.
Very independent in all senses, and including the appreciation of the Palestine question. And I must say, this is a question of integrity, of engagement to the truth, that the current government of Brazil and its predecessor have been always very loyal to this cause, to this appreciation of the Middle East question according to the best standards of law and justice.
I can feel how important is this subject. You have mentioned the Palestinian case twice. Why are you so proud to deal with this case?
You know, Karen, this is a point, this is a matter, the Palestinian question, the question of the Middle East, a point that is not very fairly treated by the international media, is not fairly treated by a number of governments all around the world. So for someone having Arab blood, it's comfortable to see that in its country of adoption, the general vision of the problem, even the media's approach to the question, and most especially the government's, the official positions, are really wise understandings and positions, and positions which are coherent with our devotion to the sense of law, of enforcement of law, of international law, and of international justice.
You have published many books, mainly about law, and you have this passion to share all your knowledge with the others, don't you?
I'm a university professor. I have always been a man of a classroom. And I understand, Karen, that especially when we are led by life to prominent positions very early in life, it's important to have students before you, because they challenge you every moment. They induce you to be autocritical and to try to improve yourself. I think that it's a very unfortunate option to be led by life. In my youth, Karen, I wrote short stories. A number of students of my generation were fond of writing short stories, small literature, although some of them became very important writers of contemporary Brazil. I have been a publisher of historical works having to do with the Council of State of the first empire of Brazil between 1824 and 1860 or so. I have published a law of treaties in 1984, and the most important textbook on international law. It's a book where the first edition was published in 1889. We are now in the 15th edition, and some 7,000 copies are published every year.
They are studied in all universities?
Yes, they are adopted in most universities, so I'm pleased to see my conception of international law adopted by so many, because the number of law students in this country is something incredible. And also young lawyers also in Brazil, due mostly to the rarity of public libraries of high standard in this area. They are, most of them are tending to have their own private libraries, their own collection of law books.
I understand. حياة فرانسيسكو رزق المهنية مبهرة، فهو كان أستاذ جامعي ودخل أكاديمية الحقوق الدولية بلاهاي، وسنة 1983 أصبح وزير المحكمة الفيدرالية العليا وبعد وزير الشؤون الخارجية. إذا بدكم تعرفوا أكثر عن حياته العائلية تابعونا بعد البريك. I would love to talk about your family now that we went through your amazing career. I know that you have been married 3 times. Your first wife and yourself had 4 children. Then you had your last daughter from your second marriage, and now you've been married for the 3rd time. Since maybe for now 7 years?
For now 4 years.
For 4 years.
Yes.
Tell us more about these 3 marriages.
Yes.
What did they bring to your life?
Yeah. My first marriage occurred when I was 26 and she was 19. We had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. And she's a very close friend of mine up to today, and the second also, by the way, the second is herself the daughter of another justice of the Supreme Court of Brazil.
Okay.
And we have permanent contacts, all of us, and the relationship between my current wife and the other 2 is splendid. And with my children, yes, with my children also. I manage
it's not
this.
Easy.
Yes, I manage this as a
you are lucky.
As a very skillful man. Anyway, and since my second wife is a professor of international law, we have a permanent contact because she very often wants my opinion, my advice on problems that she faces in the university having to do with doctrine of international law. I know that theoretically I shouldn't know, but I know that a book is about to appear. It's a sort of Libera Micorum, a tribute to a jurist with studies collected amongst jurists of many countries and many specialities. And one of the organizers of this tribute book is my second wife. Then I recall the fact that Muslims, they appear to be very proud of the fact that the virtue and the holiness of the Prophet had been identified and proclaimed by his own wife, which is marvelous, because a wife is the woman, is the person who most closely has the opportunity to identify mistakes and the defects.
One to her husband.
No, so I think that in my case, to be somewhat the object of a tribute by an ex-wife is
it's flattering.
It is flattering. It is.
I see that you're blessed also by your 3 wives. Let us talk about your 5 children.
Yes.
How is your relationship with them? Are you close to them? And
yes.
I know also that some of them are married and
yes.
you have grandchildren too.
Yes, I have 7 grandchildren. being one boy. The first one is a boy.
Yeah.
The other 6 are girls.
6 girls.
Yes. The other 6 are girls.
Are you blessed or is it curse?
Yes, I am very pleased with this. I think that my granddaughters will be of much assistance to me when I grow old.
Yes,
well, my 2 adult daughters are lawyers, although the second one, Veronica, has also studied architecture and industrial design.
So they followed your steps?
Yes. They are married, one to a lawyer, the other to a doctor, to a medicine doctor. The 2 boys, one is a lawyer and works with me. The second one is a movie maker. He
works here or in Hollywood?
Here in São Paulo. Yes, he studied here for direction of cinema. And his wife is also in this field of activity, and they work together in this area. Well, I have also the last one, Ana Clara, who is now 14 years old.
She's still at college?
Yes.
Yes. And are you close to them? Are you like a father and a friend at the same time?
Yes. I've always been, and especially now, since my return from The Hague and my establishment in São Paulo.
You have more time to spend with them. Yeah. Did you raise them in like maybe Lebanese values, the same ones you were raised by your parents?
Yes. They are all very conscious of the fact of their race, of their origin, and their cultural roots also. They have very much been influenced by my mother. They have all had very good experiences with her. Not my father, since he died when I was myself 18 only, though having not known their grandfather, Rez, they have all grown under the influence of the grandmother, of my mom. So that they feel, until today, somewhat under the influence, under the spiritual wings of the matriarch of the family.
And I guess it's a dream for them to visit Lebanon, isn't it?
It is, and I have been planning, Karen, this journey for many years. I have been I have had to postpone its success, a number of times, but I won't stay longer postponing this experience.
You shouldn't.
Because even my cousins, younger than I, a number of them, have been visiting Lebanon in the last years for more than once.
And you should. مثل ما شفنا فرانشيسكو رزق متزوج وعنده اولاد، والحياه العائليه بتعني له كثير. اذا بدكم تعرفوا اكثر عن زيارته الى لبنان سنه 1968 تابعونا بعد البريك. I would love to talk about Lebanon, knowing that you have visited your country of origins only once in 1968. I would love to know, what did you feel then when you visited Baalbek for the first time?
It was the autumn of 1968. I had just finished the first part of my studies in Paris, and I went there to know the remaining members of the family, including my father's sister, one only sister that remained in Lebanon. I knew already a lot about the country. In my childhood, I had in my bedroom a map of Lebanon and many pieces and documents and objects related to the country. It was not a surprise, but an enormous emotion to know in the reality of daily life that country that I knew so very much due to my readings and other experiences. The contact with the family was also very much gratifying for me, and the vision of the country, especially the oldest parts of it, the region of Baalbek, of Hermel, the Syrian border, the Bekaa Valley in general, the small villages like El Feki, El Ain, Ras Baalbek, other parts of the Bekaa Valley, and the historical centers, Tir, Sur, Byblos, and I have seen the whole country. My cousins have circulated all over Lebanon with me during those days. About 40 days I spent there, 68.
And why didn't you return? It's been like 45 years now.
It was due to a series of accidentalities, I was planning to go there. When I was foreign minister of Brazil, it was certain that, but eventually facts, unexpected facts, contributed to postpone this project. I kept it in mind, and I think that next year I'll be able to do it eventually.
We hope so. Yes. Did you ever spoke about your Lebanese origins in any of your speeches as Minister of the Foreign Affairs or at the Supreme Court?
It occurs very, very, very often. In my case, Karen, this is very transparent. Everyone knows who I am, what are my roots, where my family comes from, and this appears very clearly even in my classroom meetings of every day. But I must tell you that you know that in Brazil we have a colony of some 7 million or more. If you depending on the standards that you adopt to make this calculation, you can arrive easily to 11 million. Anyway, there's a number of people bearing Portuguese family names due to the fact that their Lebanese origin is from the side of their mothers.
Okay.
Well, even those are very, very, very applied to the task of informing their origin. Even those are very applied to the idea, to the intention of letting people know what their origin is and what it means, and the fact that they are members of the community, of this enormous Lebanese community in Brazil. Because, what we call here, for instance, when we say Arab food in Brazil, you mean Lebanese food. It means Lebanese food. The Arab community in Brazil is essentially
Lebanese.
A Lebanese community, with some exceptions having to do with the part of Syria which neighbors Lebanon, and in the very recent years a very important Palestine community, but important, not comparable
to the Lebanese community. So you are proud to be Lebanese?
We are all very proud of it.
And we are proud to have such Lebanese descent, great personalities here in Brazil. I would like to see if you have a last word to all Lebanese who are watching us tonight.
I know that you have been hearing members of the community during these days, including the Vice President of Brazil and including members of the scientific, legal community and from the business area and so. And I think that you have heard from them the expression of very similar feelings.
Yes, indeed.
On what we feel and what are our concerns about Lebanon, the future of the country, which is for us a very major question, a very major preoccupation. We expect to be able to contribute somewhat to give in a near future, not in a far, but in a near future, a fair, a just, a legal solution to the problems of the Middle East, and especially to see Lebanon grown with all the splendor it bears and it deserves, having been the most innocent victim of the whole crisis.
Indeed. I'm really touched by what you're saying, and I really hope that you and other Lebanese descendants will come and help us have peace in the most beautiful country in the world, Lebanon. Professor Francisco Rezek, thank you for this beautiful interview. I hope to see you very soon in this peaceful Lebanon we are all dreaming of, and thank you again.
I thank you, Karen. It was a pleasure for me.
تعرفنا اليوم على فرانشيسكو رزق، هالإنسان اللي حصد على شهادات عليا من أهم الجامعات بالعالم ووصل على أهم المراكز بالبرازيل. إن شاء الله نكون تعلمنا منه التواضع، المثابرة والرقي. إذا بدكم تعرفوا أكثر عن هالحلقة أو عن فرانشيسكو رزق ما تنسوا تتابعونا على مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي. ما تنسوا تحضرونا الأسبوع القادم بنفس الوقت تكتشفوا اسم جديد من أسماء من التاريخ.